You are a chocolate mud cake with yummy icing on top. We're going to have a look at some PulseChain moon maths. And we could do it for PulseX too. Where do we get these 50x, 100x, 1000x targets? Where do they come from? I want you to know that the future is outside of our control. We don't know where the price targets will hit. All we can do is hold to get there. You can't control anything, baby dolls. I can't either. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But if you act like a soy drinking paper hand with a hunched back, you can't participate in the upside. If only you had a friend out there like me, who you like and subscribe to actually tell you that these numbers are possible. If only. Here we go. So I'm here to teach you some just information. HEX was modeled after Bitcoin. So Richard Hart, aka Ricardo, he has also modeled PulseChain after Ethereum. So Ethereum went nuclear to the sky. Ethereum did a 10,000x. So PulseChain's designed to do 10,000x just like Ethereum did, which is 31 cents to 3,100 is 10,000x. It actually went higher. I think it did like a total 14,000x. But I just want you to say, yes, I can design a car to fly, but it can never go off the ground. It's true. You can always say that. But at least you have some informational edge here to get you to believe in long term. That's what it's going to take. So Greg, the duck, he modeled Bitcoin. He looked at Bitcoin, he modeled it, he created HEX. So HEX had similar inflation to Bitcoin. It still does. The HEX inflation rate drops over time and it actually approaches 3.69%, which is what Bitcoin's inflation rate roughly is at the 10-year mark. And Bitcoin did like 1,000,000x. So when he created HEX in 2019, it was finally launched. That's where it came from. You don't need to change the parameters. You go with what works. So we can look at these similar inflation numbers and you can think about what's going to happen for PulseChain. Well, I went back and I found the chart of the inflation rate for Ethereum. And here's my prediction. I think Greg is going to model PulseChain with the Ethereum inflation rate as well. I know he does not like to change things when they don't need to change. Whenever something works, you use the parameters. Very intelligent way to approach things. So I've also mentioned here, we could get 14% APY for our Pulse in our first year. So you might ask, with testnet version 4, which was just announced, and breaking news released on my channel here, you'll notice that the inflation rate is 3%. So in testnet version 3, it was 0.3% because of the old parameters, and he just 10x'd it. It's around 3% now. But remember, Greg owns 90% of the coins. So if Greg never stakes anything and sits there, the real inflation rate of the circulating supply might be like 27%. So what we might find happens is Greg runs some validators out there and it brings the inflation rate down to like maybe this Ethereum number. Because Ethereum worked, why change it? Ethereum's inflation rate was 14% here for the first year, and then it dropped 10%. So you could just smooth this down and drop it down over time. So what would happen is Greg, who's here, flapping his little wings, looking at us like he's better than us right now. Look at you, Greg, over there. He's checking us out, and Greg can just smooth this out by staking with the validators for Pulse, and then he can slowly toggle the inflation rate down, which is effectively what happens in HEX as well. HEX's inflation rate was huge at the start, just like Bitcoin. Bitcoin was like 100% in the first year, and then it went to 50%, and then like 30%, and the halvening, it goes down lower over time. So you start with a high inflation rate to reward the believers because they need a reason to hold. It's very important. This is how you bootstrap an economy. And we are in a digital economy, crypto. So you're basically telling people, hey, there's an inflation handout here and it's going to go down in the future. And you have a long-term view, right? So you should be holding. And that's what they do. That's what we do. You will hold and get the yield rewards so you don't get diluted. Eventually, the number gets low enough, but hopefully it's bootstrapped by this point. So this is like 5 years. This is how the game works. So what I also like to do is I want to see, all right, do these numbers match up? Where can PulseChain, PulseX go? How can these numbers really, really be put together? So what I did was have a look at, I went to CoinMarketCap. The market cap of HEX is about 12 billion. And what I did was I compared HEX to Bitcoin because I want to see its actual percentage. So what I did was if you have HEX, HEX equals 12 billion, BTC equals 510 billion. And if you do that number, it's about, so you can write this down, HEX equals, I think roughly, get this number, it's 2.3% of Bitcoin size. That's one way to look at it. So what I'm going to do is, you're comparing HEX to Bitcoin, I'm going to now compare PulseChain to Ethereum because I'm trying to value what the market is right now. Of course, we assume growth in the future, otherwise we wouldn't hold, but I just want to see, can this match up? Because before you hold to long targets, baby dolls, you have to link it up in your mind. That's why you watch my videos. I can link this together, and of course it can be wrong. I'm happy to be wrong. It's wrong, right? If it's wrong, it just doesn't happen. But if we get it halfway or a third of the way, you want some conviction behind you saying, hey, I put the pieces of the puzzle together a long time ago and we're not done yet. This is what you really want. Because think about it, like the people who bought Bitcoin at $100, many were just thinking of $1,000. But who made it to 60K? It's the guy thinking about $1 million, the guy who will never sell. So yes, he missed the top from 60K down to 15, but he never sold at $1,000 because he was thinking about $1 million. He got to witness much higher, he or she or they, and Greg themselves. So with PulseChain and PulseX, now I'm just going to look at PulseChain itself. So Ethereum's market cap is about half a Bitcoin. It is, for Ethereum, right? So we have PLS. I'm going to use the starting sacrifice market cap. That's what I'm just going to assume. The starting, whatever we put in, that dollar, 670 million. ETH equals 230 billion. So what we can do is we can do a percentage of that. Just like how we compared HEX to Bitcoin, now I'm going to compare what Pulse to Ethereum will be. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this 2.3%. I'm going to assume we're around a fair value. And the number you get is 5 billion for Pulse. Right? So what this is telling me is I think Pulse should be 9x higher than when we sacrificed in July of 2021. That's what this is telling me. Of course, we can trade down. We can go to zero if we want, but I'm measuring a fair value in my mind already. We should be 9x higher by default. That's because based off HEX and Bitcoin, these numbers. Based off the similar community size, I'm just looking at a fair value. And we can go a step further. You can actually look at the chart here. Just like with HEX and Bitcoin, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume this chart goes up in the future. So this is what you're going to see me do. What you're going to see me do is, you see this channel, this is the HEX BTC chart, the pure chart, the long-term chart. I'm going to assume it goes back to the top one day. And from today, that is about around a 4x. And even if you think that's a bit too much, even do a 3x. We all know this is very conservative, but I'm just trying to get you to get on this level. You can do like a 3 to 4x. You can mark it here. So what I've done is I've imagined HEX BTC going up. And I want you to know one thing. When you draw anything versus Bitcoin going up, that means it's gaining on Bitcoin. So HEX going up, say 3x against Bitcoin would mean, we go back to this. Do you remember how this was a 2.3% of its size? you can multiply that by 3. So I want to know, how big would HEX be when we start to go up and the community is growing? How big is it going to be compared to Bitcoin? 2.3, we're going to multiply it by 3. Now you have 6.9% size. Now, remember, in HEX, we have a religious cult, and people believe we are going to flip Bitcoin. And that's exactly what we want. That means everybody's passionate. Everybody believes in the product, in the community. The community is the asset. We do much better. You speak to Richard Hart, he's going to say, yeah, we're better than Bitcoin. We should be better. Of course they're going to say that. But I'm just dealing with these numbers here so you can see, hey, where are we potentially going in the future? Of course, we're going up, and we're not going to know exactly how much, but this gives us an idea. So the new value, if you assume, hey, you know, maybe the crypto market continues, it's 6.9%. So the new one would be 6.9%. So you'd write here, after pump equals 6.9% of Bitcoin size. Now you can see where I'm going here. I'm going to now look at Pulse and assume it can also be that size of Ethereum today. So what you can do is you can do 6.9% of 230 billion. And what we can do is we can do 6.9% of 230 billion. You have 15.8 billion. Just round it up, 16 billion. Isn't that nuts? So after pump, you can write now, after pump, PLS equals 16 billion, which is 6.9% of Ethereum's size. Trying to see how the market is valuing it. Now, once again, of course, all of us in PulseChain, we are going to say that we're a better Ethereum. We should flip Ethereum. Of course, we're going to say that. Let's put that to the side, just dealing with these numbers for now. So that is a huge amount. Effectively, what that means is your day one sacrifice is going to go monster against Ethereum. This is fantastic, friends. This means, so you can do this number, assuming Ethereum is at the same price today, which it won't be versus US dollar. But if you, I'm imagining the PLS ETH ratio in my head, and you can do 16 billion divided by 0.67 billion divided by 0.7. This is huge, by the way. That's 24x almost. That's over a 20x on your Ethereum. I can't, my mind is blowing if this actually works out, because that means, what this means is 1 ETH put into PulseChain should be worth, in future, assuming no destruction, it should be worth 20 ETH value. So I'm not saying to exit, but I am suggesting, yes, if you wanted to take profit and you're happy with that, because you might say, hey man, like there are people out there, let's say you put 3 Ethereum, 3, and this happens. You're like, oh my God, I could sell for 60 Ethereum at some point. Yeah, you might say to me, hey, I'm getting nervous. What do I do? Yeah, if you say to me, hey, is it okay for me to take out a third, take out 20 Ethereum and put it on the side? I'll say yeah, because you might be looking at $10,000 each Ethereum in the future. That might be 200K. You might be looking at that. That is one potential thing. But remember, these numbers are crazy because I'm looking at HEX BTC. So I also have the HEX Ethereum chart. So we can actually look at it. You have to manually construct it here. And we don't know what the launch date's going to be. So remember, this is HEX ETH now. HEX ETH. From day one launch, it went up 220x. You see this? Remove the last 2 digits. So from the day one launch around here, that's how much it went up. Huge. If you want to look at this first wave against Ethereum, it still went up. I want to look at this. It went up 45x. That's how much HEX pumped. So it's crazy to think about. Now, you know what's funny? Some of you might say, what about diminishing returns? But let me throw this at you. Ethereum is also diminishing returns. So think about this. So in these cycles, in this part here, Ethereum went up 50x from 2020, which is here. This is actually, you see this is March 2020, the zombie virus right here. This zone, Ethereum did a 50x from $100 up to 4,900. So around 49, 50x. So, and look at this, HEX beat Ethereum. So that's why the numbers are huge, friends. So from here, you can actually do it right here. So HEX beat Ethereum by 150 times. So 1 ETH put into HEX at the top became 150 ETH. If you want to look at it, what it's worth today, it's worth 32 ETH. So it's still huge, even after all this. But at the top was 150 ETH. And this is how you can do a rough calculation. If you beat Ethereum by 150 times, and you know if Ethereum did like a 49x, there you go. That's the 7,300x for HEX. You all know it did 10,000x from there. So that's roughly how you get these. It's crazy. It's crazy. I think the real number is like about 25x because Ethereum hit like $100, but it bounced back to like 150 quickly. But still, there you go, the 3,700x. I mean, you're dealing with wildly, astronomically huge numbers anyway. But you can see now there is some hopium here because Ethereum is diminishing and PulseChain's new now. Whereas if you look with his HEX ETH chart, Ethereum was still in its second cycle and it had the big pump. So this is something to consider. So looking at these relative measures, man, we can do some real damage. So if you remember this number here, it's about 20 ETH. You know, I rounded it down, 20 to 22 ETH. That's huge, man. That is life-changing. Life-changing. To get 20x on your Ethereum, people will, and for like a core, for a blue chip, for a solid asset that you don't have to think about selling like anytime soon. It's not like some sort of meme coin where you just get out. This is worth a lot. So remember, it all comes from the fact that I can imagine in my mind this HEX BTC chart going up. That's all it came from. This little piece of the puzzle. So if you can imagine HEX beating BTC, and all I did was I said, okay, if the market values HEX to be a certain percentage of Bitcoin, let's just use that same percentage for PulseChain and PulseX. We can do that. Look, if PulseChain goes a huge number like that to the future, well, it's going to be enormous. And I've only done a 20x from the day one listing. Like a lot of people, you might be thinking about 50, 100x. We're dealing with enormous multipliers on your Ethereum. Huge. So at the end of the day, aren't you glad that you're getting into something early and somebody is actually trying to get this to pump the most? So at the end, really, when you think about it, the inflation shouldn't matter too much. If Ethereum was able to pump this much, so Ethereum from 14%, see how its inflation rate went down here? Ethereum still did its 5,000x from here. Actually more. Ethereum did like 4,000x in its first cycle. So it went from, it was 1,400, the ICO was 31 cents. There you go, 4,500x. Even though it had a big inflation rate. I mean, like, look, if you know anything about us with how aggressive we all are, that's why I'm saying you should be happy with 50 to 100x. Even though these numbers, they sound low compared to these. But if you're upset that PulseChain only goes 50x or it only gives you 20 times on your Ethereum, if you're upset by that, then I urge you now, use yourself as a signal. You are not long enough. You don't have enough skin in the game. Don't worry about me. I'm going to be happy if PulseChain and PulseX are up 10x. I'll be literally over the moon. 10x. I don't even care if they never go $1 above that. I'll promise you. That's how exposed I am. That's how happy I would be. So if you are seeing 99x, 98x in your mind, and you're thinking, that's disgusting, well, think about what that means for you. That means you did not invest enough time, labor units, into this. If you remember, friends, I always tell you to invest in your labor units. Don't invest based off dollars. So if you earn 12 months of income per year and you invest 3 months income and you receive 50x on your investment, then you get back, you can just do, friends, it's easy. You'll get back 0.25 years. You get a 50x on that. You get back 12.5 years of income. You don't have to work for 12 and a half years. How crazy is that? So a lot of people, they don't have, but look, this is the catch, right? You have to put 3 months of income in. So you might say, hey, what if I put my 3 months in and it goes to zero? Well, yes, you've wasted 3 months of your life. Welcome to the real world. If there was no risk, you would not get this reward. But also, you know, hey, if this thing goes 100x, you only need 1.5 months. And this gets 100x. But how much risk do you want to take on this not happening? That's up to you now to figure out. I've now put the pieces of the puzzle together. What I think happens doesn't even really matter. All I know is I'm exposed enough. I'm exposed enough. PulseChain, cheap to Ethereum. HEX, cheap to Bitcoin. PulseX, that's going to be a different wild card. Completely different wild card. It might be great if we see PulseX, and I'm going to get the logo up here because we're going to need extreme friendship for this one. PulseX valuation is huge. It is. But we have never seen anyone have the balls, the cojones, to actually deploy a big DEX in crypto that actually has monetization on it. And PulseX is going to be doing all the volume, routing back in, buying and burning, etc. Yeah, it's going to take time, but we haven't actually really seen it in crypto. DEXs are very new. Uniswap, only a 2020 phenomenon. We're still new. Maybe the dark horse here comes out. The market's never seen anything truly like this. So this is the wild card. That's why PulseX can underwhelm or overwhelm. And just to leave you with this, I remember my predictions. If you were to guess based off all the numbers, friends, you got to remember, I'm going to get these logos again. We're going to get all 3 logos here because this is very important. I say this time and time again, but I know a lot of people got to hear it. Our guesses are worth nothing because we need to know how many future users join the network. Right. That's why. Our guesses are worth nothing. So if I say here, when I say $1.50 HEX, when I say as well for PulseX, when I say 50x fair value, when I say 50x on PulseX, I'm going to go through what these mean as well. And when I say like 125x PulseChain, which is PLS, they mean nothing. They actually mean nothing. I plugged in users in the future. 1, the future's not here. And 2, I assumed we just hit that number and stop. And I assumed they go like, you know, we get like 1 million people. What if we got like 3 million? Well, then we get 1,000x. If we only got 2 million, then you go down to like the 200 to 400x mark. But if you go to 1 million, then you get these numbers here. That's why I put them there. And final hopium for you, but don't lean too much on these. In the euphoria, these fair values get disconnected. I've made many videos. I've shown you it disconnected in Bitcoin the first 4 times. It disconnected in Ethereum. It disconnected in Doge. It disconnected in everything. It disconnects the first times. And it makes sense because no one knows how to value these. But there was one where it did not disconnect. Cardano. Cardano hit roughly its Metcalfe's law fair value, and then it just dropped like a rock. It hit around $3, $2.50, and then it just started sinking in line, which is... It's scary, but I need you to know that. I'm just sharing with you the truth. There was a scenario, and even Cardano was very surprised to learn this, where it hit the fair value and it dropped. So yes, I think it's unlikely we hit these fair values and stop, but I'm letting you know it is possible. So when you see these numbers here, you shouldn't be saying, well, I'm leaving it all on the table. Like you might be thinking, hey, maybe I should get 20% out or 1/3 out. That's something to think about. And how much did they disconnect on the upside? This is where it gets juicy. But not so juicy because now we don't know. Because it can go anywhere from 2x to 6x on the upside from these numbers. 2x to 6x. But Here's another thing, friends. Remember, our guesses are worth nothing. One thing, right? HEX went 6x above fair value in first cycle. So this is where you have to be intellectually honest with yourself. Do you believe PulseChain and PulseX are truly cycle 1 coins? Or are you going to be intellectually honest and say, hey, I think PulseChain and PulseX are a continuation of the HEX community, and they might exhibit some characteristics of cycle 2. So I don't know the answer here. I don't know the answer because HEX is now in cycle 2. So this is where we venture into the unknowns. So you might say to me, hey, does that mean they're just going to diminish returns? No. But if I'm just to take a wild stab in the dark, so you get your banana out and you just poke the dark and see if you poke anyone with your peeled banana. Take a bite out of it first if you're hungry. If I was to take a wild guess, I think we don't get the 6x euphoria side. Maybe it's towards the 2x. Maybe even plus 50%. That's what I'm just thinking. That's what I'm thinking. And that would still be okay to me. That means HEX anywhere from the $2 to the $3 mark. PulseX anywhere from the 75x to the 100x mark. Pulse anywhere from the 200x to 300x mark. This is something to think about. And if you're watching this for the first time and you want to get in, you're like, oh, how are these numbers possible? Like, well, chill out. Like, it can hit the euphoria numbers for like one day and it drops like 40%. That's what happened in the past. These things don't happen like sitting up there for months and months for everyone to think about what's going on. It'll be ultra bullish at the top. So now, at least you have some currency. You have an idea. You know, we can gain value over time. You can imagine this chart going up in your mind as well. You know that, hey, if this is modeled after Ethereum and Bitcoin, perhaps they are destined for greater future. And, you know, maybe you'll be able to earn some PLS reward on the side, but you get to see what's going on. You see the pieces of the puzzle put together. But really, at the end of the day, we're just guessing. Don't forget that. However, you know what we're not guessing on? That's right. Our friendship. You tell your mum and your dad that you love them today, friends.